Welcome to The Favorites, the podcast presented by Bet365. We are part of the Volume Podcast Network. I am Chad Millman of the Action Network. Today is our very first NFL episode of this long and winding offseason, but the NFL never stops. We will discuss the upcoming NFL draft, this week's combine in Indianapolis, the latest league headlines. We're going to be joined by a very special guest who will be on the ground in Indy. But first, live from our Tommy John home studios, I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF professional better, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Chad. How we doing?
So good. So good. Today is my wife's birthday, and I've been on it. Like, I got the gifts. I got my kids to get the gifts. I put the candle in like cornbread muffin this morning that my younger son had gone out to get while me and my wife were at dinner last night. I got her, like, I asked her when I went downstairs today, would you like some lunch? And I brought her some lunch. Like, I am fucking nailing it today.
The flowers on the way?
I'm gonna get them later.
All right, good. Always flowers.
I screwed up on the flowers. Like, I realized this morning when I got back from running an errand that I didn't do the flowers. So I'll get them. I got time.
Good man.
Not over. Listen, before we get to our guest, Simon, we have to give Matt Mitchell his flowers, speaking of, because we had no idea how people were going to react to his pre-Civil War tales of gambling mayhem with Andrew Jackson and Mutiny on the Sea. But I did get a bunch of texts from friends about how much they love them. And these are not hardcore gambling guys. And we did get a lot of positive emails and notes from listeners as well. We will be doing another Gambling Stories episode in the future. Next month, we're going to bring on David Schwartz, the author of Rolled Bones that Matt liberally borrowed from. I've known David a long time. He's been a professor at UNLV of gambling history forever. He'll have some great stuff. How did you feel it went, Simon? Were you happy with it? Did you get response from anybody?
I liked it, but you definitely saw the age disparity. I heard from people 45 and above, no one from 45 and under. So I would say sounds about right for that type of episode.
Oh, that's funny. All right, let's bring on our guest. She's covered NFL data, NFL science, NFL everything with the NFL Network for almost a decade. Before that, she was one of the few people roaming the halls at ESPN, smart enough to understand the impending analytics revolution, and she worked like crazy to get ahead of it. As I remember from our many conversations back at the Worldwide Leader, she's the impresario of Numbers Game with Cynthia Frelund. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
That is I'm very touched with that intro. Thank you very much. Very sweet. I also have like a real gambling story about my grandpa. I don't know if you've ever heard this one.
Do it.
But, he's now not with us, but in the 40s, he went into an illegal casino in Toledo, Ohio. I'm from Michigan and he's from near Detroit. He won almost $40,000 in the 40s, which was a lot, playing craps. And he said, as he tells the story, he heard like the shotgun thing after, and they're like, aren't you going to keep playing? And he's like, heck no, I'm out of here. He bought the farm. He was very, very poor growing up. He bought the farm that his family was working on. And he actually bought a company that brought supplies for the tables as the casinos were being built in Detroit. So he provided the tables and the kind of the like all the different games at the time. They're very automated, but at the time they were far less automated. And that was how I got to go to college, was because, well, I got a scholarship, but my grandfather really helped my parents out with that stuff too. So all because in the 40s he played a bunch of craps and he left when he knew when to walk away, if you will.
You are the legacy of a gambling kingpin.
I am the legacy. And he used to take me to the horse track a lot, like unbeknownst to my parents. So I spent a lot of time at a horse track when I was little too. All good.
Is that how you got into it? Is that how you even, because like I remember you and I used to talk about this all the time at ESPN. There were like 4 people who were interested in this stuff at ESPN, and
Right.
you weren't even on the broadcasting side, the
No.
digital side. You were on the business
Yeah,
side.
I was buying big data. I was buying
Yes.
tech companies around big data. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Explain to people like, you know, how you made that transition and how you even got recognized that this was a space you wanted to be in.
Well, I worked at the league office in 2008 to 10 for Anthony Noto, who was the CFO at the time. And we were working on a project called season inventory restructuring, a very interesting way of saying should it be 18 games, 17 games, etc. And we were going through different permutations of how the bottom line would be affected in all of those different scenarios. Spoiler alert, we're going to have 18 games pretty soon here. I don't think anyone's surprised or shocked by that. But at that time, I sat with the competition committee, and these are Hall of Famers. These are guys who are epic coaches, and you get to sit in this dark room and you get to eat snacks and swear and watch football and learn. And I got to ask any question I wanted. What is that off-ball linebacker supposed to be doing? And they told me, or they said, oh, I don't effing know, but like really great stuff. So when I was first doing that, that's kind of when I realized that there was, well, one, I really liked it. I thought it was interesting. And then I went to more school. I learned how to code, and I realized I could apply the same things I was using for financial models to kind of sports models. And then I got a chance to add a data science degree to my arsenal of way too many degrees and whatever. I'm still paying for that. We're good. But ultimately, I figured out that there was kind of a way to be involved, and I really always liked sports and trying to get an edge in any particular way. I had a very big comfort level with risk taking. I'm not scared of risk like many people are, and I think part of that was because my grandpa was always, I mean, he taught me how to bet on ponies when I was little. So ultimately, I just didn't, it didn't feel like this thing that was like dark. It felt like fun and interesting, right? Like buyer speed ratings. Like these are things my grandma's like, this is crap. This guy's good. This is like all this stuff. And I just felt very comfortable with it. I don't know. I was just, it was common parlance in my house, I guess. Maybe that's just weird, but I don't know.
It's wild to me. We've had so many conversations about this. I had no idea that story about your grandfather.
Oh yeah. And the even cooler part is he flew down to Florida on a plane, when people used to get dressed up, and to meet with the wholesalers. He was there for a week. He ate breakfast at the same diner every single day and had the same waitress every day. Asked her on one date, then asked her parents if she could come back up to Michigan. And my grandmother flew up from,
No.
yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, they got married from 1 week in Florida. Crazy, right?
Mitchell is losing his mind
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
That is a crazy story.
My grandpa was cool. Like he was like, that's a cool man. Like Alton, his name was Alton, but I mean, that's just a cool name. And yeah, no, and he had like shotguns. We had a woodpecker in our backyard when you're not really supposed to shoot them. Shot it with a shotgun. Crazy. Anyways.
That's
Oh
unreal.
yeah.
All right. So now you've moved on from betting the ponies. You escaped
Moved on
working as
or added?
yeah, added.
Got it.
You
Okay. I love the
added,
ponies.
you escaped the shackles of ESPN executive dumb. You found a home on air and writing. Your writing is fantastic at NFL Network. Um, you just put out your first mock for 2025.
Uh-huh.
Explain to people, like, given everything you've just said about data science,
Yep.
how you look at the NFL, how are you doing a mock? How is it different than the way other people do a mock?
So I think the thought exercise, and I think there's a lot of different ways you could do a mock. A lot of people look to try to get inside information to divine what a play, what's the rumor, what's the prevailing rumor, are the Giants going to take it, all these things, right? Instead, I said, all right, here's the actual free agent pool. Here are their ratings. Here's the actual team's cap situation as it stands and their current draft pick status. In for the sake of my editor, and you appreciate this, I'm not allowed to propose trades because I would literally trade out every single pick. Um, so no trades allowed. But ultimately, what you're trying to say is you're trying to look at all the different ways that you can say, how do we win this year, given what we know about the different, like the draft, the order, what's the kind of the trade scenario? It could be what's the free agent scenario, like where will, oh, I don't know, Sam Darnold end up and how might that impact them? So I don't typically have a quarterback going to a team first, in large part because the team that's typically picking first is one that needs other things as well. O-lines are a typical one. For me, the Titans, they're better served, at least at this point, getting a bridge quarterback with one of the free agents and then potentially taking, in my mock, Travis Hunter. He's the most dynamic player, the one that's worth that first pick overall. I know that, position wise, quarterback is the most valuable position. However, in this is a bit of a flavor draft for quarterbacks. That's how my model kind of reads it. So the flavor isn't right for them because they could get Travis Hunter, which would add more value to their bottom line this year.
All right, let me do a quick interruption here because I know Simon's
Yeah.
going to want to jump in. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365. And now new Bet365 customers get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Sign up using promo code Favorites. Deposit $10. Place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Those bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Okay, before we dive in, very, very quickly, officially, you can RSVP for our free Favorites live show event in my hometown of Chicago. This will be for the Elite Eight March Madness games on Saturday, March 29th. It's at Joe's Bar on Weed Street. If you don't know, this place is crazy popular and crazy cool. Great music venue in Chicago, Joe's Bar on Weed Street. It's near-ish Lincoln Park in Chicago. Free event, free drinks, free live show. Please RSVP to reserve your spot. Just follow the link in the episode's description.
Chad, you have to call it Joe's on Weed.
I know. I know.
Everybody calls it Joe's on Weed.
That as someone who has spent a lot of time in Chicago,
it's a cool place. I can vouch for it. But but like those in the know, I know you're supposed to call it Joe's Bar on Weed Street. No, it's Joe's on Weed because it's more fun that way.
Well, it is Joe's on Weed. And we actually had a conversation in the Slack channel. Can we say Joe's on Weed? Is our sponsor going to get upset about saying Joe's on Weed? And then Matt Mitchell had to explain, no, it's called Joe's on Weed because it's on Weed Street. So yes, for those in the know, for those in Chicago, we're talking about Joe's on Weed.
Don't get mad, sponsor. That's great. It's more fun that
just
way.
What it's called. It's cool.
It's cool.
Just cool. Simon loves it. Hi, Simon.
Yeah. Weed is tight.
Simon, what's your take on Travis Hunter? What is your take on Cynthia's take that this is a flavor draft for quarterbacks?
I mean, you know my view on it, Chad. I'm so QB heavy when it comes to drafts. I remember 2-3 years ago when we were talking about Houston, they were in talks of just taking Will Anderson and not taking a quarterback. And I said, this is a failure of an organization. If they don't take Bryce Young, CJ, or Anthony Richardson, they're just not a real organization because you just can't keep kicking the can down the road. Like eventually you just got to pull the trigger. The Browns have kicked the can down the road for years. And then they took Baker and then they say, you know what, Baker's not good enough. We're going to bring in someone else. These are the organizations that just don't make it in this league. There's these organizations that are always in the bottom of the league. So I get her points. Like when I'm going through this draft class, it really is opinion based. Like there isn't a Caleb Williams, a Jaden Daniels, or even, you know, what you want to say. Like there wasn't really a competition. Jaden Daniels being number one pick last year, but there were guys who I respected that had Jaden Daniels at a higher grade than Caleb Williams. This year, it's really like all the scouts I've talked to, Chad, it's a really hard back and forth between guys' opinions. And then because of the elder free agency, like we've heard all the rumors about Stafford, we've heard about Kirk Cousins. So this is a really unique, tough draft class where, you know, if you don't love the guys at the top, why wouldn't you just trade down and go after one of these vets, right? Because there is something to take away from getting these vets. So for someone like me that I just never pass on the quarterback, if I need a quarterback and I'm one of these teams, you just rip the Band-Aid off and take one. Like, Cam Ward, is he perfect? No. Could he be a legit 10, 15-year start in this league? Yes. This kid has some amazing tools. So it's really interesting breaking it all down where there's a couple of athletes, one in a lifetime type of athletes at the top of this draft that teams could take, or can they just take one of these quarterbacks that they have major questions about, but they just need to do it. So I'm with her. Like, if I was one of these GMs and I was stuck in one of these spots, I honestly probably would, if I'm trying to save my own ass and save my job, I probably would look towards a Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and then hopefully take a quarterback next year, because there's just a lot of unknowns about these guys at the very top of this draft right now.
Well, look, what's interesting. Go ahead, Cynthia. You go.
I was going to say, until the Senior Bowl, my optimal strategy would have been to get a top end guy that's not a quarterback first round, get the free agent veteran, and then get like a Jackson Dart. But Jackson Dart played himself too highly in the Senior Bowl, and now he won't be available for a low enough cost for that optimal strategy to work. So maybe there'll be another guy who could potentially be this nice. I think you should really be drafting quarterback probably every season, maybe not first overall, but in subsequent rounds. But again, these guys are playing themselves out of they're not in my good area. Stay in the fourth round, buddy. You're fine then. You'll actually be in a much better position long term, and you don't have 5 years till you get paid. You only have 4. Just saying. But whatever.
Well, what's interesting when you talk about there is no Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams or even any kind of consensus, it does feel like there's some consensus building around Cam Ward being, a little bit further ahead of Shedeur Sanders. Cynthia, you had Sanders 9th, I think, going to the Saints. And that was until recently one of the lower options for Sanders. And then CBS came out this week and said they had him at 22nd in their mock draft. Mel Kiper has him at number 3. Give me your thoughts on how you end up with him where he is and what you're hearing around the league about that delta between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
So to start with, Shedeur Sanders specifically, I think number one, nobody questions that he's a winner. We know he's won at every level. We know his dad's been there to help him away. He has the pedigree. There's a lot of things that are working in his favor. I talked to him at Honors and he was very mad at me for making him go 9th. But there's a couple of things that are the metrics are pointing me in the direction of Shedeur needing a little bit more help than a Jaden Daniels. I was one of those people who had Jaden Daniels higher because I believe in this modern league right now, you need to be able to throw on the run, and on the run being dictated as Next Gen Stats has it at 8 miles an hour. I'm going to go with 6 miles an hour. That's the break point I found. But that's like a legit run. That's a 10-minute mile, right? If you're running that fast, you have to be able to throw on the run. You have to be able to get out of dicey situations because there aren't very many good O-lines. And if you're a quarterback, Jaden Daniels went to an O-line that wasn't very good in Washington and was able to make the most of it. Point being, whereas Caleb Williams, who had a lot of upside for me, he wasn't able to change directions. He didn't have that mobility. We didn't see it at USC. And then he gets clobbered. But, the Bears O-line was no good. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be, I don't think I'm telling you something that.
Facts are facts. There's no alternative facts here. It's
right. I'm not, it's not an opinion, right? I'm not, he was under a ton of pressure, much harder for him. So in this case, Shedeur Sanders, to me, was a much better pairing with the Saints, where potentially it's a better O-line situation for him, especially in the middle of that O-line, than some of these other choices. The Giants O-line, I don't like one bit. I don't think I'm alone in that. The Raiders, do they have an interior O-line? Jackson Powers Jones from last year could maybe take a step forward, but again, I don't know. The run game was non-existent last year. I don't know if Chip Kelly can fix that, but whatever. And, point being is when he has just a little bit more help, a field stretching wide receiver situation, a number of them, and a good running back, that is a great place for a rookie quarterback to land. So I told him, I'm like, listen, think about the opportunity there. You have Alvin Kamara, you Chris Olave. You get some people to throw to. You go to the Giants and the run game is not great. You have a great Malik Neighbors, sure, but other than that, it's all you, man. Go to a good situation. So that was kind of how that worked out for Shedeur, because he doesn't have as many of the. It's not to say he can't do it. He just hasn't had to. So his resume is incomplete in those marks. That he doesn't have that. Cam Ward has a little bit more of those marks. To me, compared to other people, he would have been maybe fourth or fifth last year. Cam Ward would have been in terms of quarterback rankings for me. And in prior seasons, maybe as high as third. He's first in this one. That's great for him. Good for him. Like scarcity is excellent for him. His resume is strangely incomplete as well. So to me, it's not as much about, it's just more projection for these two top guys than it is actual seeing them do the things that matter. And I think you now in this league, you must be able to throw hard with velocity on the run. Otherwise, it's going to be really, really hard for you to succeed.
Simon.
Yeah, I
Thoughts
would
on that?
say it's been interesting, Chad, talking to all the different scouts. Like, from my perspective, Mel Kiper talked to the same scout I talked to on the Giants, which is they're all in on Sanders. Apparently, they love this kid. They love his playing style. And then I'll talk to, a scout I respect for Arizona, and he's joking with me. His ceiling for Sanders is Geno Smith on Seattle right now. Like, to me, he's a late first, second round pick. And that's the trouble with this draft class. It's just really heavy opinion based and what you're looking for. Like Cam Ward, a lot of guys view him as very smooth, the way he plays, his style, that reminds them of a less athletic, obviously, he's still incredibly athletic, but a less athletic Lamar. Like that confidence, that smooth, that flick of the wrist, downfield passing. That's what Cam Ward is. He's one of the better athletes I've seen come out. And I view it as, the bump down he's getting, Chad, is if he didn't play in the SEC, he didn't play in the Big Ten. Like that's a real thing when you talk to these NFL scouts now is it's all about what competition they're playing against. We've seen it time and time again. These quarterbacks that play in the ACC, they might be good, but you're going to see them come in and struggle, right? That's just facts. Like getting caught up to real NFL speed, you're never going to see that at the ACC. And we've seen it now. Like, I got caught with that. I was crazy high on Trevor Lawrence. We've seen Trevor Lawrence have some really tough learning curves since coming out. And it's been, 5 years now. And he's never developed to what we expect. So that to me is what's working against Cam Ward right now is that he played against people view as lesser than competition, where Sanders, you either love him or you don't. Like to me, what I'm hearing from the Giants is they love the kid. They don't care. Like they don't care what people view him as, what their rankings as. Like they're all in on this kid. They believe in him. They believe in him as a leader of men. That's going to be their guy. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out these next couple of months, where it's like, if the Giants want him, they might have to go up and get him because other teams might have the same view as him. So pretty wild that the Giants here in the third spot are kind of dictating how that top of the draft might go if they want to move up with Tennessee and take who they believe in as Sanders at number one.
If I'm Joe Shane, I am telling everyone and their brother that I'm taking Matthew Stafford. Maybe it's a lie, but I'm bluffing, or at least potentially considering bluffing, because the truth is I feel like for whatever reason, Giant scouts tell way too much of the truth, and everyone else are lying liars who lie. So I need him to bluff for me a lot more. Like I'm hoping to go to the combine and hear nothing but Stafford to Giants, Stafford to Giants. They need to give us, like, stop telling everybody who you want. Stop it. You lose all your leverage in it, and stop being so like, yeah, I don't want them to be bad. One of my good friends played for the Giants a million years ago, Matthias Kunuka, still one of my best friends to this day. He won 2 Super Bowls with them, and good Lord, like it's just been like, I want them. I want everyone to be good. I'm a Lions fan, so of course I do, right? Like, but I'd like to see this not get telegraphed again this year. I just feel like they're always telegraphed.
You had a line in your mock for Travis Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
That said, and my question isn't, okay, you got Travis Hunter going number 1 to the Titans. My question is, Travis Hunter comes off the board no later than 3rd overall in 81% of 1 million simulations. 1 million simulations.
Yes.
Explain that to me.
So as of right now, what you can do is you can take historical reference points for Tennessee, the brain trust that's now in charge of them, with kind of historical situations like this. You can take off the free agents, excuse me, and then you can take all of the different ways that this could play out from a trade standpoint as of right now. Now, if the Giants make a move and telegraph that they're taking a quarterback right away, it brings it down, but only to about 70. So right now he goes very, 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 very high. Like it's kind of amazing how high him and Abdul Carter are both projected to go for me, based on just what we what's known about free agency. And then, of course, the LSU offensive tackle, like that's going to be a good one too, because this is a terrible O-line class. Like we think it's a weird quarterback class. It's a very light offensive lineman class. And so point being is that there're just so many. Travis Hunter is such a rare athlete. And I actually think combine wise later this week, maybe we'll hear a little bit more about potentially him as a wide receiver. I don't, I think we hear a lot about corner, but he projects to be a great wide receiver for me as well. Like great, like maybe even better than corner.
Like, why, if you're Travis Hunter, why wouldn't you play the position? You're equally good at both. You're a potentially once in a generation athlete. You just won the Heisman as essentially a two-way player. Why wouldn't you go to receiver? Like that to me is where the most money is.
It's no doubt where the most money is, but it's possible that, I mean, he's playing for Dion, right? And like, potentially you see an idol. I don't know. I'm trying to understand it, but maybe I don't know. If it were me and that's my client, I'm like, you're playing wide receiver, my friend. Like,
yeah,
you play corner
no-brainer.
because you can't catch. That's the common, well, I don't know. I'm not sure why he wouldn't. I think he will. I guess my point is I think that we'll see a little bit more of that combine chatter. I think that's one thing I expect to hear.
What will you look for when you get to the combine? When someone like you is going to the combine, what is the value of it for you?
Well, obviously, from the drill standpoint, it's a gut check to see if all of the stuff that we saw in field pans out. So as long as you're within the proper ranges for certain things at your position, check the box. Who cares, right? Sometimes if someone runs really fast, we know it doesn't really always translate to awesomeness, but if someone's out of range slow, that's a reason to go back and double check your work to see if what happened on the field, if you're missing something, right? Small school guys that fall into ranges that are maybe better than you expected, that's another place to look for potential, day 2, 3 steals. But the biggest benefit of being there is going through the process and the interview part, meaning it's a rigorous process. Like you're poked, you're prodded, these kids now are millionaires before they're even, they used to be nice. Now they're already millionaires and they're already whatever. So can you go through this process and respect the ritual of it? Because those scouts, they work so freaking hard. They're gone 250 days a year. Like, can you be nice? Like, can you just be the person who's a good teammate? Can you handle being nice to the hotel staff? Are you not a jerk, basically? And how do those interviews go? And then for me specifically, the other value is trying to kind of understand where people's heads are at in terms of free agents. And of course, if they're going to trade draft positions, what they're really focusing on. And my personal favorite is kind of who are their later round, like who are the guys that are like, I love this kid, blah, 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 who's going to be a late round steal. So it's less about the on-field stuff. That's just like a check the box gut, like, is what you put on the field who you are now? Did you respect the process of training and doing all the things that are part of this, like whether or not you think the NFL could be innovated and, made more modern, which we all could find ways to do that. You have to respect the process of this. This is what these guys are. Those hand timer guys with the 40, like they'll never go away, even though we have way better ways to do it now. It's part of the process. It's part of what people love about it. The ritual of it matters. Can you go through it and be that guy? Are you a good teammate?
But how much access are you actually getting? Like how much of this, do you get extra access because you're with NFL Network? Are you getting more time with players? Like how much can you really glean from their personalities? And how much of this is just shoe leather? You're talking to the people helping with bags and at the front desk and, the servers and things like that.
Well, we've started doing, we've turned the whole combine into an event. So fans are now able to come watch. And the good news about that is I get to stand on the field and as they're done, I mean, it's a grueling day for me as well. 6 hours of keeping the fans excited. These are amazing fans, by the way. Like the fact that they come out the way that they do and show up, just amazing. But getting to see how someone reacts when they don't, like those little micro expressions when they don't run the 40 that they expected, or when they do, or when who's talking to whom, who do the guys gravitate? I get to stand right on the field with them. So while it may not go into an implicit model that I make, I do feel like I get a good firsthand sense of how these guys interact with one another, because being on the field with them, you can see who needs a hug. You can see who's like, offering the hug to someone else. Like, the who's the dude, that dude, like, you can't model that. That's not quantitative at all, but the qualitative aspects. And you can see who's gravitate. Like, all of the guys last year loved Jaden Daniel. They were like laughing, all like, you could see who's having fun with who's a loner, who's not, who's, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it does help you feel like you understand them a little bit better. And of course, then there's, the shoe leather part and talking to agents and trying to get a good sense of, you kind of know who, this too, Chad, like, too, Simon, like who's like blowing smoke up your bum, like, and which agents are like, my God, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whatever, dude. Like, okay, cool. Like,
Right.
but yeah, it's a long week, but it's my favorite week of the whole NFL season.
Quick break here. Simon, as usual, I was pondering 5th century Greek philosophy earlier today, specifically the parable of Hercules at the crossroads. In this tale, a young Hercules approaches a fork in the road, and at each path stands a beautiful figure. One represents virtue, the path of dignity and purity. The other represents vice, the path of decadence and ease. The path Hercules chooses that day will shape ancient Greek history, but a lot of our listeners face the same choice every day: dignity and purity, or decadence and easy living. A stressful decision. But I've got good news, Simon. Our listeners don't have to choose. They can merge these pathways thanks to our sponsor, Tommy John. Only Tommy John offers the dignity and purity of the highest quality underwear and casual essentials, while also delivering the decadence and easy living of unrivaled comfort. Everything a young Hercules needs to become unburdened by hard choices. And with a special sale for our listeners, merging these paths just got even easier. Simon, why will you be wearing more Tommy John in 2025?
Because comfort is king, Chad.
Right now, you can shop TommyJohn.com/favorites and get 25% off your first order. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/favorites. That's TommyJohn.com/favorites. I look forward to next episode, where we will go very deep on Marcus Aurelius and his writings. It's going to be super exciting. Simon, I think you wanted to ask Cynthia the next question.
Yes, it was interesting. Like, when I found out we were having you on as a guest, I don't listen to too many football shows during the season because I don't want to be one of those people that people are like, oh, you got your picks from this show, or I even start copying your mannerisms. Like, there's so many things I already copy from people that, the staple words that we don't even mean to, right? It's brutal. So listening to your show, I noticed, Man vs. Machine, you tend to go with the favorites more often than you go with betting dogs. Now, is that unique to 2024? Because me and Chad, we got punished. Like, we've talked ad nauseum about it, but we basically didn't adjust to last season where the kickoff rules did change football, right? We all can agree now, especially after the season, that it made teams more willing to go for it on fourth down, or even from their own 40, than we've ever seen in historical data looking back at the NFL. Was that unique to last season, or do you always tend to go towards the favorites? Because I know professionals who, they might only bet 13, 14 bets a total a year, and they'll all be on favorites. But you're doing 3 bets a weekend. So, like, on me and Chad show, we go dog heavy because we have to bet 5 a weekend, which is fucking brutal. You're in the same spot. You're having to bet 3 every weekend. Is that easier for you to go more favorite, or do you just play it as the model comes to you? You just play whatever is best, showing best value for you?
Well, we have to, so I actually put all my picks out for everything, and then I put confidence levels on anything. So you can look at, like, you can go through how confident I'm about favorite, against the spread, totals, etc. I was terrible on totals this year, just so we're clear. But this year, favorites were, I got a chance to do preseason with the Broncos, and Sean Payton is one of those coaches who really does a good job of explaining how special teams can impact everything. So it really did help in teaching my model. And I say teaching like this because a lot of the things that he said to look for, like I run a model that's what's been historically right for 8 seasons. 8 seasons is about right. And then I look at what's tracking this season. And then I look to see I basically ask coaches what the heck's going on. And then they help me understand what the data is. So this year, favorites happen to be better because of field position. I mean, just in general, field position was a better strategy for teams with better offenses. Like it just worked out better. Look at the Lions, especially when they lost everyone, but on their defense. So that was what happens. I mean, on man versus machine, I'm just basically trying to beat Greg. So I
Right.
know what all of Greg's positions are because we're on another show called Game Day View together. So I see everything he's going to say, and I just pick 3 to try to beat him. So it's really not, that one's just like really me trying to beat Greg. And we do good value picks, but because everything's out there and you can see where I land on all of it, then I feel like it's more fun to try to kick Greg's butt just because, I'm not competitive at all.
It's interesting. You mentioned the Peyton stuff, and Simon and I have talked about the field position and the kickoff rules and how we're going to think about the kickoff rules and
Yep.
field position and fourth down variance and being more aggressive as we go forward in the next season. What did Peyton explain to you
Yep.
that you were able to incorporate that maybe made you think differently going into last season?
That this season, people who are riskier on offense will get paid off, and then going into next season, it will reverse because defenses will catch up. So teams like obviously the Lions were fourth down team, the Eagles fourth down team, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of those teams, you have to. He basically was like he would say in his terms, it's like give them a +1, not 1 point. Like he just means like give them a little bit of an advantage, right? So give them a +1, and it did tend to play out like that. I guess injuries, of course, impact how that's kind of handled. But he took me through this whole thing about when is the strategy, like are you really going to give Patrick Mahomes, someone he has to deal with, right? Or are you really going to, who cares, like why not go for it if you're on this specific the yard line, right? Like if you're gonna, why make Patrick Mahomes go 90 freaking yards? Don't take 3 points and give him now only 60 yards or whatever, 65 yards even, whatever. Make him go 90 because that changes the calculus. You're more likely to get the ball back on a favorable side for you, so then you could kick it the second time, depending on how many times your possessions are. Like every coach has a little bit different strategy with how many possessions you should kick versus not, but make Patrick Mahomes go 90 yards. Just that was kind of the best way to summarize it, right? Make if you're in the AFC West specifically, make them go the whole way. Now, if you're playing the Raiders, kick the field goal. But if you're playing Justin Herbert, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, you're going to make him go 90 yards.
Yeah, it's like, Simon, why did teams need an offseason to adjust for this? Cynthia just said, like, it'll be different this year because defense will figure it out. Why can't they figure it out in the middle of the season?
They'll try to, Chad, but I think too what she's touching on a little bit as well is that the NFL has just changed so much, Chad. We're like, not that I give you shit about it, but there's a lot of fans out there that miss the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees throwing for 5,000 yards in a season. The NFL has just gone away from that completely, and we've seen the involvement of the running quarterback. And she even touched on it there, where it's changed the game in so many different ways. The biggest one to me is that these teams with young quarterbacks, they will go for it on fourth down. Bo Nix took that Denver team to the playoffs. Why? Fourth down success rate. Washington, if you go back and look at the numbers, they would never have made the playoffs if they weren't so high variance on going for it on fourth down. Once again, a young running quarterback. So that's also something I've thrown into my model, and we've talked about, where it's like the game has changed. It's no longer, if it's 4th and 3, automatic punt, right? Teams on 4th and 5 are going for it now because of the high variance of what you just talked about. It's like, do you want to make them drive 90 or do you want to kick a 3 here? And make Mahomes go 60, 65 yards where it's like you're already dead. So that's also something where in the middle of the season, Chad, I think they did try to adjust it, but it didn't matter, right? Because we saw Jamie Daniels still was going 7 of 8 on fourth down in back-to-back games. Like just the craziest high variance because these teams couldn't stop that QB run pass option because these young quarterbacks are so athletic. So that's also part of it, brother, where it's like it's not just a drop back guy where if you can get your 4 guys head of steam, they're going to be dropping back here on 4th and 4 to run it. I mean, even the Eagles would run it on, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 with Saquon just to get in a 4th and 3 position. So we've just seen the game has evolved and changed so much now with the way defenses play that, these running quarterbacks, I mean, it's been a major shift. Like a guy we talked to the very top, Dart is a good quarterback. He's a pocket passer. 10 years ago, Chad, he's probably a top 5, top 10 pick.
Right.
Now, he's probably going to be back towards the end of the first round just because he's not this young stud athlete. So, the NFL, the way it's evolved, it's just totally different now where, 4th and 3, it's the same as being 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. Like, that's how these coaches kind of view it right now. And like you talked about, we tried to adjust it. I mean, obviously, it worked out much better for us. We did pretty well in the playoffs, so we did catch up to it. But it really was heavy favorites. Like that's what you talked about all year was that we couldn't adjust to the favorites. It was just so overwhelming. What was it, 75% after week 11, Chad, that the favorites covered? You can't adjust to that. We bet dogs. So for me and you personally, that was brutal. But I would say to the NFL, they're going to make adjustments. What those adjustments are, I don't know yet. Because to me, it's how do you stop these running quarterbacks? You can say the Eagles are one of the best defenses in football. Jaden Daniels was basically having his way with that defense in the playoffs. Like his teammates failed him, not Jaden Daniels. So the new NFL, man, it's tough. Like these weapons, everyone's copying Lamar's style. It's totally changed the game. And we just saw Jalen Hurts, he set the record for 70 rushing yards in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He broke it this past year, growing for 72. Like we're living in the moment of an evolved quarterback position. It's all about can your model adjust to it, and same goes for the NFL. Can these head coaches adjust to it? Which I can't wait. We just saw all these guys talking about. Like she says she's going to the combine. She's going to hear so much conversation about this exact thing we're talking about. Like I can only imagine every guy in the bars having drinks, or they're saying, how the fuck do we stop these guys? Like how do we stop Jaden Daniels in the future? Because that to me, that's the biggest question mark right now is how do you stop this new rushing West Coast offense these quarterbacks play?
So I have a stat for you that's actually really interesting. There are some imperfections. I'm not going to pretend rushing yards over expected or expecting rush yards is perfect. I'm not. But directionally, I think it is actually quite telling. A running back, their baseline, let's just say it's adjusted by route. So inside and outside are taken separately. However, an expected gain for a running back on any early down, first or second down, is 4.2 yards. So that's an expected gain on a running back, right? For a running back. For a quarterback on any down, including third down, it's 6 yards. So that's exactly what you're saying. So 4.2 versus 6. That's a massively different value proposition than we've seen in the past. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the good news for people who love defense, of which I am one of them. If I could play any position, I would be Brian Branch. I would be a really big badass safety. That would be that's my spirit animal right there. But
you're Cam Chancellor.
Exactly. I want to like that's what I want to do, right? Like that. It's so not my personality. I'm such a wimp, but in my head, that's what I'm manifesting or whatever. But this is a great defensive front class. So the D line here, there's a lot of good defensive tackles. There's a lot of good rushers. I'm not going to just say edge because they're not coming from the edge. And now that we've seen, I think, the pendulum will swing back and forth, right? We've seen people run duo, which is, what your high school does, like just running right up through the center. It's kind of coming back. So while the quarterback position feels like, we have to evolve really a lot, they are also getting paid more. So potentially we're asking them to do 2 jobs. Maybe that's part of it. But I think we will see some pocket passing. If you can get the right O-line and you can get the right receivers, that could be a good way to do it. Joe Burrow, I know he can run, but Joe Burrow to me is a little bit of it's weird to call him a throwback, but he feels a little bit more like a throwback given the state of the NFL right now. The difference, if he doesn't get Jamar and T back, it's going to be crazy. So, or something that level. So point being is I think we will see the shift. The pendulum will shift back a little bit. And maybe it starts with some of these guys in this defensive class living up to expectations.
Have you guys, either of you, already started thinking about your models for next year, how you'll make adjustments,
Mhm.
and what specifically are you researching that is new? Cynthia, you're shaking your head.
Off-ball linebackers have been, before it was like Fred Warner and that's it. Like, I mean, there was a few more, but off-ball linebackers to me are the they're really hard for non-football. Like you can see what a wide receiver does. Like I know what the running back's supposed to do. I'm pretty sure I know what the quarterback's supposed to do too. Maybe not on each play, but just in general. I don't know where Fred Warner's supposed to be on a specific play. I don't know where Jack Campbell's supposed to be. I don't know where, oh, I don't know, a certain Eagles player who's probably going to get paid a lot of money and made a huge difference for that defense. So to me, a lot of the kind of the way that no one's playing base defense anymore. How who's playing with how many defensive backs? A lot of nickel, a lot of dime, what all these different. I'm very curious to see where the advantages lie. Like I think the Colts will be a much better defense this year, getting Lou Anarumo there, and I think that will then impact how we view all of these different. So I'm taking it from the center of the defense and projecting it backwards as my new flair this year. Again, I have all my other models, but I'm starting with kind of what is the middle, what is the center fielder of the defense doing, and then trying to figure out if that is a different way I could look at it that would be more strategic this year, given that I do believe the premise that defenses will have an advantage in this season after offensive having such a big one last year.
How about you, Simon?
It's tough because right now, like I did make adjustments heading into the playoffs, and I mean my model, it was a dream. It ended 10-0-1 to end the season. My model on side, so like
Hell yes, I
yeah, I
love
can't get much
that.
better than that, brother. So I'm
No, you
basically
can't.
in a spot where I'll basically just wait. This is another part of our lives. This part of the season, it's all draft right now. Then I'll
Yep.
get into the futures market, and then you know how it is, Chad. They released that week one schedule, and I'll dive into that. But really, I need to basically do what Cynthia's talking about. It's like I need to talk to different scouts, different guys on coaching staffs that I trust and rely on, and they'll give me the info about what these teams are going to try to adjust for. But that, honestly, brother, won't be until July, August. Like, that's really when the good stuff starts coming out because these guys have been working it all winter, just stuck in their homes on their couches and just grinding tape and trying to figure out how to do it. And then with excitement themselves, they can't help themselves. They'll leak me the information come July and August just because they want to be viewed as the smartest guy in the room. And I'm more than happy to sit there and not say a word and just listen and take it all in. So I don't really have a good answer for it right now, but I definitely know that there is going to be some major adjustments coming just because we saw for the first time in what feels like 10, 15 years, the rebirth of the running back. We saw that really change football this season. And the best teams, I mean, we throw the Chiefs out because they don't make sense in any way. But the Ravens, the Bills, the Eagles, the Lions, they all had really amazing run games. And that, to me, was what set them apart from all these other teams, why they were all so dominant during the regular season this year. So that's something I really can't wait to dive into this offseason is what was that adjustment? Was it simply because of the too high safety, or is there more, I'm not reading into it, about why the running back has had such a rebirth these last couple of years where this year, I mean, you can't lie, it dictated this entire season. Saquon going from the Giants to the Eagles changed this entire season. So I really cannot wait to dive into it because it's crazy how the running back has come back such with vengeance at this point where, I mean, it was left for dead not even 3-4 years ago. I mean, people just completely poo-pooed the running back position. I love that it's really back now. So I really can't wait to dive into that.
Look, everybody wants to be the smartest person in the room. Do you want to make extra money daily from your sports betting? Simon knows I'm always trying to find ways to take sports betting to the next level. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Edge Boost, the financial platform that pays you cash back to wager. Edge Boost is an online bank account that pays you for every deposit with the Edge Boost Visa debit card. You receive up to 0.5% cash back on all your sportsbook, daily fantasy site, and casino transactions. That's free money back in your pocket for doing what you're already doing. It's a no-brainer. Plus, your Edge Boost debit card starts with a $250,000 daily limit and will never be declined for gambling activity. They've got built-in tools to help you stay responsible, and there are absolutely no hidden fees or minimum required balances, so stop leaving money on the table. Visit edgeboost.bet to sign up. If you use promo code FAVORITES and deposit $25, you'll receive a $25 deposit match, plus Tier 2 status for faster bank deposits and more cash back. That's edgeboost.bet. Promo code favorites. All right, let's do a quick awards section of questions, right? Cynthia, on Numbers Game, you just did a huge award ceremony. Can you explain, by the way, Numbers Game, go to the website, go to the YouTube channel. This was on last week's episode. You gave out some awards. Explain the offensive SOS award and tell our audience who won it.
Well, first of all, I wanted to do awards. I did two things with the awards. Number one, I wanted to do some awards for people who weren't necessarily, there was a lot of questions about who should be the MVP. It felt like this big compromise between like MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and then like, well, Lamar won it twice. We're just gonna give it to John. Like, it felt like there was some sort of like, I don't know, like with your kids, it's like, well, you got this treat, so now you get this, like it's your turn this time, and whatever. So I wanted to try to like do it with completely just math. And then I also thought that there should be some different awards. For example, I thought that there should be an O-line award. I thought that there should be like, who's helping who, this SOS award, like save our ship, like, like who is like really helping out maybe even more than we anticipated them. And Brock Bowers, who obviously, not only did he set rookie receiving yards records, breaking Mike Ditka's record for yards, but also receptions, breaking Puka Nakua's rookie reception. But he was, if you draw a circle, so use computer vision, I draw a circle around like where he was even targeted. The man is like those Frisbee dogs, like going back to catch balls that he has no business catching. So he's also like very quiet, very humble, like he's a good kid. Like I'm excited to see him going forward, but he had no business even catching half of the balls that were thrown his way. They were not good passes. I'm not being mean. They just weren't. And that was, to me, I think that's like a really interesting unsung award, because every year we can always think of a guy who maybe on a different team really would have had an opportunity to, in his case, maybe rookie offensive player of the year, but even just in general, just one of those things, like just something to recognize. The interior line terrible. There was no run game to speak of. The quarterback position was a little bit of a turnstile. It was not a good situation. And save for a few pieces of their defensive front, their defense didn't, Max Crosby's awesome, but, the defense didn't really help them out either. So, Brock Bowers made that whole freaking team go. So that was, I felt like we needed to just give a guy an award who's not maybe on a playoff team or a team that has a lot of staying power in the season, but he really helped out even more than we expected.
Well, he was a total baller. Totally phenomenal.
Totally phenomenal.
Simon, you were going next.
Oh man, it's tough. I was trying to think of who do we not give enough flowers to this season, and I feel like she nailed it with the Brock Bowers pick. Like he did so much for a team that just gave back so little. I'm gonna go with our boy Chad Bryce Young. Like this kid got benched, he was left for dead, and was it like a car accident with Andy Dalton? Like he got his starting job back in the weirdest way, and he took it and he ran with it. Like. Mm-hmm. They, of all the teams I think back this past season, obviously the Bucks beat the Eagles. That Panthers team should have beat this Eagles team. And that was like no excuse. Eagles had all their starters and Bryce Young played out of his mind. And I know me and you, Chad, he saved our ass. Like we love this kid and we looked like fools for about 11 weeks. But he came back with vengeance to end the season for us. And I'm just happy too we stuck to it. So for my guy, it's got to be Bryce Young. Just totally turned it around and just shows how important the mental health is of a player in football. Like, he had all the tools, he had the skill, he just didn't have it mentally. And whatever happened, just watching it from the bench totally revamped his mind, and he came out there and played like a true leader. So yeah, Bryce Young, well deserved in my mind of an award this season.
I got a
Last,
chance
oh,
to
go
meet
ahead.
him. Oh, sorry, really quick. I got a chance
Yeah.
to meet him at the Super Bowl. And we did a panel, and it was Joe Theismann, him, and Kevin O'Connell. And I was like, when I'm hosting, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to like, what am I gonna do to like get him involved? Like, how am I gonna, I wasn't expecting him. Bryce Young on it, like, just so like I was so impressed by him and his like just his presence, and because Joe Theismann's a talker, he's got his bits, where like all the veteran players have. Bryce was just fitting right in, like it was awesome. So he really, really impressed me greatly in person. His knowledge of the game, his passion for it. Like, not to say I wasn't expecting it, but you get some of these young players and they have variable seasons and they get a little in their feelings. No, he was like, boom, like he was awesome. I'm such a fan.
All right, before you get out of here, like how we started the show, you have put out a mock draft. You're going to the combine. You do
Yep.
this every single year. Let's do mock the mock, praise the mock. Tell us the picks and predictions over the years that you should be mocked for and
Oh, yeah.
which ones you should be praised for. Start with the mock.
Okay. God, there's like a billion. Number one, my model. Even like last year, the Jaden Daniels one is one that I will stand by because that was a good one. But there was about 50 other ones in that one that I'm like, these kids are they're like out of the league already. So I'm trying to think of my best mock the mock, and I don't want to be mean because I always feel like mean saying it. But there is a certain quarterback that that my model really liked. He's a nice person, but he didn't do so great for your team.
No. But the
Mitchell
jury is still
Trubisky.
out. The
I
jury is
loved
still
Mitch
out on that
Trubisky
one.
The
though.
jury's still out. No, the
On
jury
Mitch?
has made
Oh,
the
you're talking about
verdict.
Trubisky. I thought you
I'm
meant
talking about
Caleb.
Trubisky. I'm not talking about Caleb. I'm talking about
Oh,
my model was like in, three
Listen.
times in, four times. And you know who else I was in on? Justin Fields. Again, Justin Fields came up really high for me. And I feel bad. I feel mean. I'm like picking on the Bears, but I still like Justin Fields. I still like as humans. Mitch Trubisky's awesome. And Justin, like they all are. But, the mock was a lot higher on them than maybe it should have been.
Listen, as I will do 3 times a year, I'll remind everybody, the Bears traded up. They traded up in that draft from 3 to 2. They were so anxious someone was going to take Mitch Trubisky. They traded up to get Mitch Trubisky.
They got a little fleeced there, I think.
And just did not even think about Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
How can we praise you? All right. So Mitch Trubisky, you deserve to be mocked for that. 100%. How can we praise you? Before we go.
Jaden Daniels. He was my number one and look, I liked Caleb Williams too, just to be clear. Like I didn't have him as being so vastly different, but my stuff said that he'd have a better first season by a lot, mostly because of the potential for the running and the throwing on the run. And it just happened to be right. So we like that when it works out.
We do. And that was a good call. All right, Cynthia Frelund, you're going to the Combine for NFL Network. Everyone should watch/listen to Numbers Game. Amazing stuff. That story about your grandfather is classic and so apropos for this audience. So way to save it. Way to save it for the show. As a reminder,
dropping things here.
Yeah, that's right. As a reminder, the Favorites podcast is presented by Bet365 and now new Bet365 customers. Get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. Sign up using promo code favorites, deposit $10, place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. Those bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, North Carolina, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, restrictions apply. Simon and I will return with our next episode of The Favorites, one of my favorites of the year, on the Action Network YouTube page on Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our annual Academy Awards betting preview with our Oscar expert, Michael Lasker. Download us from Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe, leave us 5 stars, say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.